Before I say another word, I have to say I'm so excited that I'm not the only lady on the stage. So really good to have you join me, Susanna. No affront to you gentlemen, of course. You're quite charming. But it's just lovely to have another woman to join this conversation. So let's get straight into it. We never have huge amounts of time, so we're going to keep a close eye on the timing if we may. Let's first begin with you, Abdullah, if I may. I'm just going to go in the order in which you're seated for no other reason than that's the order in which you're seated. So one of the key questions that one always wants to consider is the how. When you are looking and considering something to invest in, how are you going about the process of identifying that this is a good candidate for us to put our money in?
Well, first of all, let me start by thanking you and the organizers for hosting this and for the invitation. Maybe I start off with just setting the premise. We are a non-traditional investor, maybe not even an investor in the sense of the financial sense, because we are a non-profit cultural institution primarily. But we do call these things, we do call our activities as investments because we think we bring a unique lens into how we invest into capital, human capabilities, talent, and etc. And I think that unique lens, when answering a question about how, is that while maybe a financial investor will look at the financial bottom line of the investment, what the model is and what market size is and all of those traditional models, we have the double bottom line of the social impact lens as well. And we are able to take risks as a non-profit institution that are different from financially driven institutions. And so if we find a bold, creative, a talent, an idea that may be not so mature in terms of its market potential, but has a social return that is valuable enough, we do invest in it. And we have many examples of this. We do various programs. We do something called challenges, right, where we bring in non-entrepreneurs to solve world challenges from their creative and cultural lens and inject seed capital into their projects so that they can take those and manifest them. We also partner with many institutions in order to take that daring step, that I would say, into reality. I always joke that ITHRA is the place where you can take a project that you think about that has no financial return, and you maybe don't have the financial language yet, but you're very excited by it. And I joke that this, imagine that you're somebody who's excited by wearing a thobe that illuminates in the dark, right? And that, in my layman opinion, is a poor market idea. Like, there are not many people that are interested in that. We will invest in that, and we will take you on a journey to creating a thobe that illuminates in the dark that probably nobody will wear except for you, because we feel that the investment that we've made in you is going to teach you a how that ultimately will mean that you'll create a company, start jobs, and etc. And we have, maybe we'll get to that later, but we have many projects that have resulted in that as a result of it. So this repeat investment in individuals means that they're able to develop a skill set that then other investors on the table can deal with market parameters with them.
I would like to talk a little bit more about the people behind the investment, because that's essentially what you're investing in, right? It's not but we're going to come back to that conversation. Riyad, how differently do you view this question of making or choosing where to put your resources?
First of all, thank you for having me here. I'm so honored. I think it takes two sides to decide when you want to invest, especially in this kind of businesses, which is culture or creative industry. I think it's a very talent-based businesses. So you need to study the entrepreneurs themselves and the business or the business model. First of all, this industry I think we are in the evolution of the maturity of this industry, especially here in Saudi Arabia. So we have to distinguish this very well. Very important factor that there is a governmental support and a nation support toward this kind of investment. So this, what gives the investor the appetite, and the drive to go ahead in this kind of investments. But going back to the decision when we invest. So first of all, culture entrepreneurs or creative entrepreneurs in this kind of culture, they're in the center of the creativity, technology, and community. So you need to be sure that the guys are not, just focusing without knowing what's going around them. So, validating the entrepreneurs themselves and their drive and their passion, it's very important. This is first. Second, you need to just look at the business model. Where here comes the difficulty. Maybe Abdullah mentioned very important, it's easy for nonprofit to go ahead and these businesses. But it's not easy for, an investment firms to go to this business because of, there is three major differences between normal business and this kind of business. First of all, the asset class. Normal business, SMEs, you can validate, you know what is the assets, what's the machinery, whatever. But when it comes to this kind of businesses, which is in the culture, okay, you're talking about intangibility, you're talking about IPs, you're talking about future impacts. This is number one. Number two, the risk, getting along with this kind of investments. It's a totally different risk averse because you need also to validate, the impact on society. And here where I say, if you don't have the belief that this kind of investment, it has to have an ROIS, return on investments and society. Because for them, even if you lose in the investment, where you gain in the society, they're having a win. So this kind of, let's say, knowledge needs to be in the investment committee who wants to decide. Third, I think the valuation. So it's not easy to do this kind, the valuation for these startups. Maybe it's easy to go from the early stage, but I mean, in some countries where it's matured, okay, and there is a normal business model, and there is a long-term revenue associated, so you can do the valuation. But in this kind of business, especially when it's early, all right, you have to have this flexibility dealing, with the founder or the creator, people who's working here, that you can be adaptive when you need to set goals, you don't want to take a lot from their, equities because they need to have this ownership. So I think it's a very unique proposition and a unique kind of business that you need to bring special matter experts with you. To understand and see, what's the business model or operating motors that works outside. Maybe with the technology involved in these kind of businesses, it becomes a bit easier. That's why, VCs are hardly coming to this kind of businesses because, again, there is limitations of time, limitations of business models that have been there. But when technology comes, okay, to the culture tech, or whatever investment music, when it comes with technology, things are different and they can go to the VC path rather than the SME.
Susanna, if I can then come to you, because I see you nodding and smiling a lot, particularly on the question of I'm a happy person.
I didn't see that.
It's okay, Riyadh. She wasn't mad at you. No, particularly when we are in thinking about sort of VC, which Riyadh mentioned, and traditional forms of funding and some of the criteria that is used. It's almost as if we're doing a copy-paste, but we're pasting onto something where the model simply doesn't fit. 100%. So if we're looking at the question of how we think differently, in your view, as investors, what are the things that we need to be prioritizing in terms of how investments can work better to serve both the investor and the investee?
Basically, well, I'm a kind of alien who I used to be a marketing director in high-end fashion, so I understand IP and IP licensing and how to build multi-revenue stream empires, really. That's what LVMH is and many other brands. And I started to get into venture capital, and then I got out of venture capital, the classical venture capital, because I realized that looking at things, you can't wear the same coat, in cultural investments at least. And I've been spending the last 3-4 years on a methodology of how we actually, I spend a lot of my time finding the most amazing cultural entrepreneurs and technologists and basically choosing, selecting the most amazing artists who are the institutions from MoMA to Serpentine. I'm not naming many cultural institutions. They don't have nor the know-how how to invest in them, and they don't have the funding, unfortunately, how to fund these cultural entrepreneurs. And if you're selecting the brain instead of the product, because everyone's focusing on a product in the art world, like that's why it's so lucrative, the sculptures, the paintings, you know, NFTs, product. I'm focusing on IP, and I'm focusing on tech primitives, two things. And when you combine the tech primitives, you can license the tech primitive and build the 10x investment profile from venture investments. And then I have the most amazing cultural entrepreneurs. I'm marketing their technology and actually empowering the institution. We're replacing their exhibitions, games, films, etc. So it's like a dual model. And I think if I'm giving money just to a cultural entrepreneur, they're going to spend it and burn it in a fast amount of time. So you need to, it's more like a venture studio builder model. Like you need to have a build with them. You need to have methodologies. You need to have the social capital as well. So it's like a whole systematic approach that I think is lacking in the cultural aspects, but it's untapped potential, you know. And culture is the key for societal change, which is my slogan and obsession. And if you're bringing in the business acumen from venture capital and venture building, plus the IP licensing from fashion, this is the sweet spot. And the time is now, because the gallery model is collapsing, institutional model is collapsing. And actually, I read about you last night, and you have a very similar methodology, Riyadh.
Yeah.
And I was super excited to hear about you, because like I love meeting with other entrepreneurs or builders or investors who look at systematic problems and solving them systematically.
Thank you.
I think that's so interesting, because what I'm beginning to hear is this view of, yes, there is the product, yes, there is the funds, but ultimately, if we are looking at what the underlying asset is, which is the creator, if we're thinking of investing in underlying assets, which is what funding should be doing in any event, then we are able to better sustain what they produce in the long run. Before we explore that view a little bit further, Severin, if I can then come to you. If we consider what the previous speakers have said, but we're also looking at how we decide on when an idea is ripe for us to invest. How do we do that in a way that is meaningful, impactful, and sustainable?
Yeah, fair question. I mean, I think that's not mutually exclusive, right? I think it's the other way around. It's mutually beneficial. So if there is a creative impact, there is also very often scale to it. And I think in venture capital, you need to find those models where the creative impact and the scalability is given, right? And I think there's a lot of models we just need to look around. They already exist, right? I mean, the biggest startup, so to say, in Europe is a company called Spotify, right? That is a creative tech company. In US, you could say a company like Netflix is in the most 10 valuable companies. There, it's also creative industries, right? Yep. You could argue electronic arts, which is now, I guess, being a lot discussed in this country as well, is also creative industries, because that's gaming. So these companies already exist, and there is a lot of examples of highly scalable venture cases, hyperscale companies, which are in the creative industries. We just need to be more aware of that. And I think what we need to do is to kind of build a home for them, right? And that's what I'm trying to build with my fund, because when I started the fund, and really the motivation to start the fund was like, you have all those deep tech funds and fintech funds and health tech funds and you name it, right? And it's very good that they exist, but there's not a single creative tech fund out there in a way, right? And I'm in venture for the last 8 years, roughly, a bit longer than that. And that kind of bugged me. I was like wondering, why is that the case, right? Is there just not enough opportunities? Is the exit landscape not interesting enough? Why is it that we don't have dedicated funds for the creative industries? And I did an analysis, and if you look at the top tier funds in the world, like the Sequoias and Andreessen and Horowitz of the world, if you look at their portfolios, it's quite surprising. You learn that quite a high percentage of their companies are actually companies in the creative industries. Yep. And again, I'm talking about Spotify, I'm talking about electronic arts, I'm talking about Figma, Canva, think about all the Gen AI image, video tools, Gen AI audio. So there's a huge wave coming of creative tech companies. They're just not labeled as them.
So is that then the key here? Is it less about what and the less about how you're thinking about the what, if you will?
Yes.
And I'd like to get your views on that, Severin, but also if I can come back to you, Riyadh, and explore that notion a little bit further, because I think there's a gap here which we haven't spoken about today, and I think it's emerging now. So please go ahead. Severin, you. Yes, you.
Yeah, I mean, just as I said, right? I mean, what am I doing at the end of the day is like building a home for tech founders in the creative industries, right? And the interesting part is that creative tech founders are usually very, very passionate about what they're doing. But what they usually don't have, let's say, the view on the tech market as other founders in the tech industries would have, or in the deep tech sector and so on. So the moment you build a home for them and the moment you build brands and an ecosystem for them, I think you will also see a dramatic increase of founders actually building tech companies and scalable models because they see it's possible to build that. Yeah. And that is really the vision also here for the fund. Yeah.
I believe one of the gaps where we have to really highlight, okay, it's the alignment between the investor mindset and the creator or the creative or the, creative mindset. So, these guys are more emotional, more attached to whatever products or things they do. And the other party is very logical, okay, data-driven, number-driven. So I believe if there were, when there is, such, what she did coming from the background of creativity, culture, fashion, knowing that, passing through the numbers, having this, let's say, 360 view where she knows the language of the creator and the, and the creative talents, and knowing what it takes for a company to scale. If there will be this alignment, and if you can educate and you can get closer a little bit to their creative mind, and they can get closer to what it takes to sustain their businesses. And that's the problem. Again, let's agree that, normally anything in the cultural world, okay, it's a very personal. So you will see an artist or a painter or musician. So it's a personal, it's a hobby, mostly hobby. So how can you convert this hobby to convince him that you have to be a legacy? And how this can be a legacy is by sustaining this and scaling for the long term. So you need to give away, sometimes part of what you want to do. Again, it's the 80-20 rule, how to pass through the bottleneck relation, I would say.
Abdullah, this is sort of what you try to do, right? Is you're trying to identify where you can enhance skills so that it's not just about I'm personally creating these beautiful things and I'm hoping someone will see them and buy them, but I can create the beautiful things or the beautiful experiences or whatever it is and still have the know-how about market access, about funding, about the language of funding. How does that actually work in reality though? Because sometimes people who do create need to be in a prolonged state of creativity in order for them to do what they do, which doesn't necessarily allow you to emerge and do the boardroom thinking and the finance deal making.
Yeah, I think that's where institutions like these come, institutions that have the mindset of the financial aspect, but the other, the respect for the cultural sector as well. So I'd say, for example, for Inithra, I'd say we specialize in creating first-time entrepreneurs, yes. Right? And so maybe deal flows for funds require these entrepreneurs to be ready. I'll take an example. We have a big program with the Cultural Development Fund of Saudi over the last multiple years. Now, rather than just being a regular fund or a seed investment to a project, we require an intensive filtration and immersion process right before you get the fund that requires you to open a company. Many of them haven't even thought about a company. They just have a product, they don't have a company. After they create the company, we talk about the financial, but also the cultural impact. We try to weigh both. If they are not able to provide the financial acumen and business acumen that they need, we supplement that through the support that they can get. So sometimes the artist doesn't need to be the manager and the CEO, but they can be the creative director of that company rather than being the financial. Sometimes they do have that capability. And that's created over 600 jobs in the last 3 years, created over 50 companies, just from this, I'm going to call medium-sized program that's done in collaboration with the Cultural Development Fund. And so I feel like the ecosystem as a whole needs to look at the entrepreneur, to answer your question, so that entities are taking the risk on the entrepreneur at this stage, entities are taking the risk with the investment at a very early stage, and entities are scaling the investment later on.
Susanna, the next question then is, if we are looking at creating an environment in which funding becomes more readily available because it is more considerate in taking all of these things into account, so suddenly more money becomes available. How are we then going to do what Abdullah is trying to do, but at scale, so that we have enough uptake of that funding to build upon? How do we build the pipeline?
So I did something reversed. I just used my case. I don't know, I can't answer to that question generally speaking, but this is the way I realized how I can scale. I did the reverse system, what venture capitalists do. You raise a fund on a thesis and you find deal flow, I did other way around. I found deal flow, the most amazing creatives who are exhibiting on the highest institutional level. And I started to build an investment thesis based upon their IPs and the tech primitives that we scouted, and then now build a fund, and we have a venture studio. So you have the methodology, you have the brain, you have the marketing power, and then now you can scale, at scale, 15 ways, for instance, because we scouted 15 of these. I call it world-building projects, because, for instance, it can go on for years. One of them started 3 years ago, and it's still an ongoing project. And I didn't invest in it, but unfortunately I didn't meet them at the time. I would have immediately now. Fantastic artistic duo called Operator. And they couldn't find investors, so they invested their own money to build a technology that allows choreography pieces to become digital art pieces. They launched a beautiful collection. And now they're licensing the technology to the Parisian Ballet House. They just exhibited in Hong Kong Art Basel. And they have a recurring revenues on the revenue stream: tech primitive, the culture production, and the digital art. And then now they go to fashion, revenue stream, revenue stream, revenue stream. So this is how I'm thinking, because if you ever were a marketing person, my first question that I want to answer, who's my customer? And then I go backwards. You know, I always have a backwards way of thinking. That's how I think you can scale. If you build a fund, that's cool, you have the money. But do you have the methodology? Do you have the talent? And I don't know, I just did it all the way around. That's my answer to the question. I don't know if I answered correctly.
No, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. I think that there is an answer, which is what encourages us to think differently about the spaces that we're in. So let's talk for a moment then about diversity. We know if you're looking at stock exchanges everywhere, ESG is a big thing. It's about, the environment, social governance. If we can focus on the social for just a moment, it's about diversity in terms of the who, in the people, whether it's gender, whether it's upbringing, whether it's culture, and all of these things. How then do we ensure that when we are thinking about funding, that diversity is included in there? Because the assumption that people may make is that, of course, it's going to be diverse, but that's not necessarily so, because as with everything, it has to be deliberate. If I can get you perhaps to go on that first, Susanna, and then Severin, I'd like to hear your response on that.
Diversity as in the founders?
No, the diversity as in the considerations that you're making when you're allocating funds, ensuring that you're not just giving funding, but that you're fostering a diverse environment for creativity.
I have a multiple answers to this question.
Okay, can you give me one of your multiples?
Well, I guess one of them is like diversity, as in diversity in like how I like
Gender, maybe,
gender,
your color, whatever.
yeah, but like it can be economic diversity as well.
Exactly.
So that's what I was starting to ask. What kind of diversity you mean? I think it's in a sense economic diversity. So, for instance, I tell you examples. Like I never look at people. I'm a female GP, by the way, in Silicon Valley. So, like, if I look at, like, and blockchain, I was into Bitcoin since 2013. So, I'm like a weirdest person in all of the rooms. I don't look at that type of diversity ever. I look at taste. Like, I don't know, if you have good taste and you have a good nose, one of my Swedish friend, he's my mentor, Susanna, you have a really good nose. Like if you work in fashion, work in culture, diversity, for me, I don't look at Gabriel Massan is a black artist from Brazil and I'm gonna invest in him so I can tick boxes of diversity. I'm looking at talent, but they're all over the world because like, I don't know, international amazing artists you can find them across the globe. If I look at the diversity, if I look at economic diversity,
I might have,
go
just...
please.
I think when you have this value inside, sorry about that, I mean, because it's, when you have this value, as a GP or an investor in you, okay, I think the selection of, the founder, he has to be aligned with you in this value. So if you're sure that, whoever you're investing with is aligned with you in this kind of, value, I think in this case you will just check this,
Yeah, value aligned, that's it. The most important thing is that, to be honest.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to blame them because they didn't give me enough heads up to tell me that we were out of time. So we are out of time, but I really think this diversity question and how you approach the notion of diversity is precisely where I was hoping you would go. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go further down that route. So, Abdullah, Riyad, Susanna, Severin, to all four of you, thank you so very much for joining me and for your insights. Much appreciated. Please show them your thanks. And if I can ask you to exit that way. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you.